When we remember a time, we remember moments. A kaleidoscope of the sights, the sounds, the emotions that remind us of the way we were. Our world. It's about time. Tonight, Up Against the Wall, August, October, 1961. Here are Linda Ellerby and Ray Gandolf.
For the next hour, think of your television set as a time machine.
We're going to a troubled time tonight, but a time when hope was more than a four-letter word.
Welcome to our world. It is 1961, late summer, early fall. Some days we seem not so much to greet the dawn as to confront it. But then confrontation is in the air. And in Berlin, Southeast Asia, the South, space, the baseball park, and on TV. Someone is pushing and someone else is equally determined not to be pushed. Most of all, determined not to be pushed up against the wall. The wall. Sometimes they call it the new frontier.
In the summer of '61, the Soviet Union seemed to be flexing its muscles. Nikita Khrushchev wanted to resume nuclear testing, and he wanted to get the Allies out of Berlin. And he thought that President Kennedy, who had stubbed his toes so painfully at the Bay of Pigs, would be a soft touch. Before we begin with the dramatic events of August, September, and October, let's back up for a moment to June of 1961 and the summit meeting in Vienna. Khrushchev all but put a bear hug on Kennedy and laid it on the line.
At that meeting, Chairman Khrushchev tried to intimidate the new young president of the United States with an ultimatum on Berlin.
Secretary of State Dean Rusk was there.
He said that in a certain number of months, we're going to make an agreement with the East Germans that the excess rights will be a matter for the East Germans, that if you in the West try to interfere with these East German decisions, there will be war. And at one point, Mr. Kennedy had to look him straight in the eye and say, well, then, Mr. Chairman, there will be war.
Well, there was no war, of course. Khrushchev did not make his separate peace with East Germany. But in August, when we pick up our story, he did order or allow the East Germans to put Berliners, literally, up against the wall.
More tension, more refugees. In the first 2 weeks of August, 16,000 people arrive in West Berlin. They all want asylum. Walt Rostow is the deputy director of the National Security Council.
People just began to pour out of East Germany through East Berlin to West Berlin, and it was a flow of the ablest people and technicians and all the rest of it. It couldn't go on, and Kennedy thought it through, and he suddenly said, you know, East Germany is bleeding to death, and Khrushchev can't afford that. He's going to have to do something, possibly a wall.
Saturday, August 12th, a record 3,300 refugees register at the Marienfeld refugee camp in West Berlin. Daniel Shore is a correspondent for CBS News.
I spent all day with camera crew at Marienfeld that day, interviewing the refugees, all of whom said they thought they might be the last people to leave. They seemed to know that something would happen within the next 24 hours.
In West Berlin, it's an ordinary Saturday night. But not in East Berlin, and not for East German border guard Rudi Turo.
At midnight, August 12th, we had a combat alert, and we were told that everything around West Berlin would be closed off. We were told that if there was a conflict, we would ride into battle on Russian tanks.
August 13th, Sunday, 2 a.m. East German soldiers show up at the border, and under man-made lights, they begin to build a man-made barricade. Daniel Shore is an eyewitness.
It's half light, and it's hard to discern what's happening. What do they got there? It looks like bales of barbed wire. And what are those funny concrete things that they've got? And why do they got those crowbars? They're digging up cobblestones. Why do they want to do that? Then we began to grasp the full dimension of what was happening. They were going to take over and seal that border.
Peter Diemel is a cameraman for NBC.
They were stringing their barbed wire, and we were very close to them. I was could touch them, and we even spoke. And they were making jokes. I said, well, what's this? And they said, oh, well, we are just doing this so you can't go over our green here, something like that. It was just a very, very relaxed thing. But a few hours later, it became very, very tense.
Crowds gather on the west side to taunt the East German soldiers as they build the wall. Some people, finding themselves being sealed off from family, friends, jobs, beg the East German soldiers to let them through. East German soldiers use water cannon and tear gas on West German crowds. West German police finally are called out to prevent battle between civilians on the west and the soldiers on the east. But where are the Allied armies that occupy West Berlin? Where are the good guys, and why aren't they doing something?
It was a tense situation. We didn't know what would happen, but we all thought we would have to fight, because no one believed that the Western Allies would allow us to block off all of East Berlin.
Berlin waits because Washington has already made up its mind. Nothing will be done. Not to ensure Berlin won't become a divided city, nor to protect anyone living in the East. President Kennedy has guaranteed freedom, but he meant freedom for those living in the West. We would not fight the wall.
If you know that at the end of the road, the West is not going to fight a war in order to knock the wall down in Berlin, then you better not start down that trail.
So the wall would stand, and for East Germans who wanted out, it was every man for himself. Kurt Wiesmach, a steelworker, wanted out. He and his wife made their way to the Teltow Canal on the border of the American sector.
We didn't see any guards here, so we decided to swim. First, I helped my wife across, and then I went back to get our clothes. When I was swimming back to the west, my wife called to me, "Watch it, Kurt. Some of them are coming." They could have shot us, but they didn't.
In the early days of the wall, before the border was sealed tight, escape was impromptu and dangerous.
We came here to film border guards setting up. Then we saw that over in East Berlin there were some young people. It looked like they wanted to come over. And after a few minutes went by, they really started to run. And one girl hit very hard with her face. She really hit the barbed wire and fall down, and blood was over her face. But she was saved by some West Berliners.
Two American students from California, Victor Pankey and Gil Ferry, tried to help an East German woman escape. They brought their car to East Berlin. Victor Pankey tells what happened.
We went out into a darkened street and an area that she felt was fairly safe, and she got in, and since she appeared to be relatively comfortable, why we decided that we would give it a try. And so from that point, why we went directly to the Checkpoint Charlie crossing. And then they immediately asked to see what's in the car. They asked us to open the hood. We opened the hood, and there she was.
The two young men were arrested. After a month, they were tried and sentenced to 2 years in prison. They don't know what happened to the woman. Konrad Schumann was an East German soldier. He was supposed to help close the border, but he saw his chance for freedom, and he jumped at it, and he made it. The street where Schumann escaped, Bernauerstrasse, presented many opportunities.
Bernauerstrasse was a normal street in West Berlin, but the East Berlin side, the front of the houses, was actually the border.